All right.
We're in business.
We're in business. Hi, everyone. Welcome to PA Podcast Episode 7. I have a very special guest here today, one of my very good friends in the commercial world, Jeremy Kenemy from CBRE, the biggest commercial brokerage in the world. How are you, Jay?
Fantastic. It's an honor to be here. I've been looking forward to this. You know, I'm number 7. I thought you would have invited me as number 1, but I guess I'm not that
I'll
important.
have you know I did, and you were too busy, mister.
Actually, yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
My
that's right.
apologies.
That's right.
I made
So
my bed. I got to lie in it now.
that's it. Don't come and try to make me look bad now,
Sorry.
or
Very
make me feel bad, rather.
difficult to do.
Difficult to do. Difficult to do. So I'll tell you guys a little something about Jeremy and I. I'm gonna talk a little bit about how we met,
Yes.
and it's interesting to me because oftentimes you never know when you put yourself in a position or in a circumstance what's going to come out of it. And I want to say now, what was it, 5, 6 maybe years ago? We went to a seminar, not together. We went to a seminar in Florida. It was a business seminar, and it was a great business seminar. Many businessmen over there, touching up on all aspects of business, finance, and all these things. And it was an interesting conference. And I remember back then it was an expensive seminar too. And it was kind of like hard for me to take that plunge and spend that kind of money. I don't even want to say how much it was, but I told myself, you know what? You need to go into an environment with like-minded people. And sometimes you have to spend the money to do it. And to make a long story short, we went to the seminar. This is actually not where I met Jeremy, but on the flight back to Montreal,
Yeah.
I hear a couple of people right behind me, and they're talking about, this business mastery seminar that we were at. And then they're discussing, and you know what? Sometimes when you're not in the mood, I was basically like really tired. I'm just, looking forward to going home. I had a newborn back then too. And then I told myself, you know what, Puria, don't be that guy. Turn around and talk to these people. They were at the same seminar than you.
I remember.
So I turned around and I said, oh, guys, you were at that seminar. So was I. Oh, great. What industry are you in? Real estate. Jeremy goes to me. He's like, well, I'm in real estate. I'm like, no way. He's like, what kind of real estate? And back then I was doing mostly residential and multi-residential. So I said, look, residential, multi-residential, touching up on commercial these days, but not too much. This is 6, 7 years ago. So just starting into it. And then Jeremy's like, I am pure commercial. And you do look like a pure commercial guy too. In a good way. In a good way.
Not sure what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So this is how we met. And I had a buddy of mine, actually a client and buddy of mine, who needed commercial space.
That's right.
And he was asking me for the longest time. He's like, Priya, come on. And I couldn't find it, because it wasn't my specialty at the time. Ever since that time, I've done more and more of it, right? But so I called Jeremy. We were on the plane for 5 minutes. We exchanged numbers
We connected like that.
like that. It was really, really instantaneous, right?
Yeah.
And I call him the next day. I said, bro, do you have any space for me? He's like, of course we do.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, 1 week later, we close a deal worth how much?
I don't know, like a good amount. I don't want to say the money, but
Yeah, it was a good
was a good-
amount. It was a
transaction.
large, it was actually my largest transaction at that time.
right. Yes.
It was my largest transaction at that time.
Yeah.
And I made what I spent at the seminar 5, 6
Multiple
fold,
times over.
right?
Yeah.
All this to say, it was a great start to a great relationship, and we've done many commercial transactions since. I've learned quite a bit from Jeremy as well in this process. And I know that you specialize in office leasing, or office space rather, although we've done industrial deals together and we've kind of dabbled into a couple of different things, and
We have.
we've been learning along the way. And today I'm proud to say that this is actually an active part of my business, though I am still active in residential.
Yeah, very much so. There's so it's interesting first of all, thanks for the introduction, and I have very fond memories of how we first met. I too, like you, am a big believer in personal development, growing and learning new things. And I mean, look, I turned 50 last week, so I've been sort of at the sales game for a good amount of time. And I started my sort of personal development journey when I was 17, when I went to my first Tony Robbins seminar.
Right.
Anyway, all this to say that I ended up over a long time getting into commercial real estate. And most people that you meet on the street don't really understand what corporate and commercial real estate is because it's not a thing that they come across in their everyday experience.
Right.
So most people, if they're lucky at some point, will have an opportunity to buy or sell a home. And in a case like that, they require professional representation by someone who knows what they're doing, someone like you, someone who's very sophisticated and has information and experience to bring to bear to make sure they make the right decision. But they have no frame of reference for commercial real estate.
No.
So immediately they think about maybe a retail space that needs to be leased out. But what they don't realize is that if you're driving down the highway and you see all these big companies, pharmaceutical companies, big law firms, accounting firms, these people don't work out of their garage. They house their business in an office space
Right.
or an industrial warehouse space sometimes.
Right.
So essentially what we do is we help companies make the right real estate decisions. When it comes to, acquisition, either purchase or lease of office space or maybe industrial warehouse type space.
Right.
And I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago, I developed a subspecialty where we help biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies not only with their office space, but with their research lab space.
Right.
Right? During COVID, as you can imagine, in 2020, there was a tremendous amount of buzz around lab space.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the
Lab space was actually a big thing. I
it
remember.
was a big thing, and it still is. But back then, you were hearing a lot about it because there was a race to get the different vaccines and those other branches of.
Not to mention the stock market exploded.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Right.
Right. So here you have people who are not allowed to go to the office. So people who own office buildings are, understandably freaked out. But meanwhile, we have a ton of money being injected into the whole biopharmaceutical industry, and my phone was ringing off the hook. So I have a science background.
Mm-hmm.
I have a science degree, and I used to work in a research lab years ago. And I was fortunate, probably 10, 15 years ago, I did a lot of work for big pharma
Closer to you.
companies. Yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
big pharma companies, and I
Yeah.
decided that I really liked that. So the bread and butter of my business is office leasing. Let's say you're a law firm and you require an office or you need to renew your lease and you're not sure, do I stay, do I go? We'll help them with that assessment. But we also developed this other branch where we deal with labs and life sciences.
Right.
Extremely technical stuff that most people don't understand, most landlords don't understand. And we've made a real good living at it.
And there's really actually no one I know, but very limited people in that space.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's such a specialty also. And I've had a couple of clients too that, we've worked on together that I've introduced to you who, they know these technicalities in a sense of what they're looking for and what a space would require or need in order to complement what they have.
Right.
It's really difficult to find, and there's so many complexities to that.
Yeah, so my team and I are going to be publishing a report in a couple of weeks, a 40-page report. Took us a year to put together on the lab life science ecosystem from a real estate perspective in Greater Montreal.
Yeah.
And what we've determined is for the longest time in recent years, there wasn't a big supply of lab space. So, when you think about this, let's say you are you're a grad student at McGill or you're a professor and you're doing some line of research. You're coming up with the next potential cure for cancer. And we do have companies that we work with who are looking for such things. And you require a space in which to do your research. Well, you can't go in your garage or a basement or a regular office space like where we are now. There's specialized equipment, fume hoods. You're dealing with potentially dangerous chemicals. Sometimes you're dealing with biohazardous materials, pathogens. So there's different types of real estate that are associated with protecting the occupants of that space and making sure that those things don't get out into the environment in a bad way.
Not to mention, not all landlords would want to expose their soil to that.
Yeah, it's more, there are very strict guidelines to make sure that when those guidelines are followed, you're not contaminating anything, obviously,
No.
in the building or the occupants or whatnot. But it's extremely expensive to build out a lab space compared to an office space like this one. You have beautiful offices here.
Thank you.
We have beautiful offices as well at CBRE. But the specialized equipment, the electrical requirements, ceiling heights, floor load capacities, there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into it
Right.
that makes it cost prohibitive for a lot of individuals, and a lot of landlords just don't know the space and don't want to go down that road.
No, they'd rather deal with the devil they know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Just like many business people rather deal with the devil they know. It's interesting because that was one of the things I felt that maybe differentiated the way I thought when I came in when it comes to real estate, because I always wanted to expand my knowledge beyond residential.
right.
Hence why I'm doing all these different things. So I've done,
Very much.
residential, then I branched off to multi-residential, then I branched off to offices a little bit with you. And then we've done some industrial deals, one
Yeah.
of which we're actually working on now, but we can't talk about.
Yeah.
But it has been such an interesting journey to me because I really can see and sense those differences between
Yeah.
each of these industries, and it's not the same thing. So commercial versus residential, they're two different animals, even though they are labeled real estate.
You're so right about that. If we look at some of the transactions, so it's actually funny. I'm having lunch with a mutual friend client that you introduced me to 6 years ago. We've been
Okay.
having his real estate ever since. So thanks.
Which one?
An amazing company called Goldcast that you've
Right.
heard of.
Yes.
There are just a lot of considerations that you have to take in, different types of considerations in commercial and corporate real estate. So let's say you're opening up an office, or let's say you already have an office. Let's say you're a law firm in Place Ville Marie downtown.
Right.
Your lease is coming up in a year and a half or 2 years from now. That's how early we need to start. You have 130,000 square feet. You have hundreds of employees. You're spending upwards of $60 per square foot per annum to rent space at 1250 René Lévesque or One Place Ville Marie or whatever that building might be. It's a big decision to decide, do I stay where I am? Should I move to a better alternative somewhere else that I'm not aware of? What are the rental rates in those different places? What are the construction costs associated? And how can I design my space so that I can maximize my productivity and my profits
And my exposure. Right.
and my exposure?
Right.
So all of these things are taken into consideration, and it's not a decision that's made overnight.
No.
Typically what a commercial real estate broker would do, first of all, we don't own properties. We're like you. We're a consultant. So tenants will come to us and say, hey, I have a decision to make in a year from now. My lease is up. Do I stay? Do I go? My needs have changed.
Right.
How do I address this? So what we'll do is we'll do a very detailed needs analysis. We'll look at the type of space they require, where are their people coming from, where are their competitors, where are their partners, what parts of town have more amenities to offer.
And it's interesting. You get a lot of privileged information, which is why we have NDAs, right? We have non-disclosure agreements specifically for this reason.
Very much
because
so.
sometimes you get some information, and it's interesting because this is information that after the fact we start to hear in the news.
Very much
right?
so.
Especially in the lab space, right?
Very much so.
And, I think post-pandemic, two things have changed. So, yes, we have a great office space. We were touching up on this, actually, a bit earlier. And so things have changed. The needs of companies for space have changed.
Yeah.
And, I have my office, but I have my office because I really need my space to do what I need to do. I have phone call after phone call after phone call. I can't be distracted. I have to be able to close my door. All these things are important to me. And so, for that reason, I don't like being in an open space. But I do know, and you shared with me, that open space is the new thing. And even your offices right now are converting to this. And many places are, because the vacancy rates are very high now compared to pre-pandemic. Is that right? Or relatively high?
They're relatively high. So over the last decade, this is not a new thing. I have seen people's space go from mostly closed offices
Right.
on the perimeter to 50-50 to, our space at CBRE is predominantly open work areas,
Okay.
but we put a lot of money into collaborative spaces. We'll have lounges, we'll have pods where people can go and do focus work quietly. We'll have small meeting rooms, we'll have large boardrooms. So,
I
in,
guess my thing is, when it's an open space, you don't get distracted. You don't get,
so it's a mixed bag. So
Right.
I've been in the business for over 20 years. I think I'm at 21 or 22 now. I'm old. I don't remember.
You started at 15.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oil of Olay twice a day.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
my secret. But when I started, I had my own private office, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I got my own private office." And then about 10 years ago, they said no private offices for anyone, including management. I think our manager has an office, but that's about it. Maybe our lawyer.
That's confidentiality too, right? So that's,
There is,
yeah.
but the whole idea is there's more collaboration in an open work environment. So I'll give you an
Okay.
example. We're predominantly an office leasing team, but we do also a tremendous amount of lab life science stuff, but fundamentally office leasing experts. And I have kind of my team here.
Right.
But behind us, we have an industrial real estate team. And we hear them, they hear us. You hear bits and pieces of information along the way,
Yeah.
which makes you more knowledgeable by osmosis of what's going on out there.
Yeah.
When you have juniors who are coming up in the business, you know this, 95% of brokers, at least in commercial, they don't make it. It's just
It's true. I mean,
it's just
it's
too
a
much, it's
high.
too difficult. There's too much risk. It takes too long to become successful. They run out of money or will
It's
at some point.
misrepresented too on social media, isn't it?
In what sense?
In the sense that a lot of times people are kind of showing it to be more glamorous than what it really is. And there is a lot
Right.
of challenges in real estate that people don't know of. When you're looking at it from the exterior, especially I think in residential, this rings truer, where people really try to make it seem more, I don't know, glamorous, more posh, more, quote unquote luxurious, more,
Yeah,
and those realities are not don't necessarily ring true. There is a lot of BS behind all of it, and people don't see that part, but they'll
you're
see.
right.
And then it's marketing, right? So every real estate agent's trying to market themselves in a certain way. I think, again, this rings truer in residential, whereas in commercial, I think it's a lot more low key. It's a lot more in the background, right?
It's it's a little bit so first of all, I want to commend you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I mean this sincerely. The first time I met you, you're one of the only residential guys I know who wears a suit most of the time. But to me, when you're wearing a suit, and I don't wear a suit every day, but when
No.
you wear a suit, it means I'm here for business. Like I'm
Yes.
serious. I'm on a mission. I've got stuff to do. I take
Yes.
myself seriously. I take my business very seriously. So when I see you and I see how you dress and how you deal with people, don't think people don't notice that. They actually notice that. So that's important. The fact that you're taking time to do all this to differentiate yourself, to me, shows a lot of initiative on your part, and you should, like, I commend you
Thank
for
you.
doing that. Before we got into this discussion, we were sort of talking about open versus closed workspace, and you were talking about how it's distracting to work in an open environment, and to some extent it is. But there's positives and negatives. Let's say for instance you were hiring a junior to work on your team. It's valuable for your junior to hear you on the phone with a client, a prospect, solving problems, because they're They're taking all this information in and internalizing it so it becomes part of them.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
By the same token, if I have a 70-page lease to read and the president of a Fortune 500 company is asking me to provide my opinion or whatever, I like to go in a pod room quietly and undistracted,
Right.
and the transition between
Almost
being
like Billions. You know, the show
like the show
Billions.
Billions.
Yes. Okay.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
We'll go
amazing.
do ayahuasca in the desert together. We'll do it after this.
After this, all right, we're gonna book our flight.
I'm down. If I'm brutally honest, I do miss the days when I had a closed office.
Right.
But when I had a closed office, my door was always open. Because if you're in an office environment and everyone's door is closed, you're not going to have that same exchange of ideas, collaboration. And collaboration in an office or in any business is super, super important. So if you want to innovate and you want to be creative and you want to stay competitive, you need a regular meeting of the minds
Yes.
with human beings. Teams and Zoom is cool and all, but it's super annoying
Yes.
after a while.
Yes.
I prefer it in person. So for instance, you know that my team does videos.
Yes.
We do quarterly videos.
I've seen
So we
that.
just finished
Your
our
market minute videos.
Our market minute. So we
Yeah.
just finished our last one, and this morning, the team, we were together in person saying, okay, well, we have to put some commentary around this. Like, what's the takeaway from this? You know, we spent half an hour doing some creative work in a group together en présentiel. There's value to that.
Yeah.
I-
And I love your videos. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I love your videos.
you.
I find them so unique, and they are super innovative. They are engaging. And for that reason, I commend you because I don't see a lot of commercial real estate agents do that. And it is important. And you brought up something else too. I come into the office. You mentioned my suit. Thank you. I try to replicate Jeremy Kenemy, but no one wears a suit like Jeremy Kenemy. I have to say. But thank you for that. I think that you need to be in work mode.
Yes.
And work mode for me, yeah, means dressing a certain way. It doesn't always, like, I'm meeting clients every day too, but even the days that I'm not meeting clients, I allow myself to dress a certain way. Why? Not because anyone's seeing me, because it puts me into the mind frame of
Yeah.
work.
Sure.
And I have had those casual Fridays where I come into like work with like my jogging pants and all those things. And I've noticed I'm not as effective or efficient. So for this reason, this has kind of shifted, that mindset. What you're wearing, in a sense, is as funny as it sounds, does kind of change how you're working. It makes
think
you
so.
feel more serious too.
I think so. I think it's a form of priming.
Yes, it is a form of
if you want to be
priming.
successful in whatever you do, you need rituals.
Yes,
Look, I don't wear a tie every day. I don't like wearing a tie most days. It's a special occasion. I'm in front of my man Tori. I got a tie today.
appreciate that.
But I will wear a suit often, most days.
Yes.
I-
It does. It's a differentiating factor when someone sees you in a suit,
Well-
especially when you're dealing with the high end, corporate guys that you're dealing with.
You have to adjust. So if I'm meeting with a software development company where people are barely wearing shorts in the summer,
Yes.
I'm not wearing the suit.
No.
If I'm meeting with an accounting firm, a law firm, some kind of professional services firm, I will probably wear the suit,
Right.
at least on my initial visit. People will make a first impression, have a first impression of you. It may or may not be accurate, but you want things to be on your side in terms of the odds, right? It doesn't hurt.
Well, it's representative of who you are too.
I would say so. I
Yeah.
mean, look, I'm pretty old school.
Yeah.
In commercial real estate when I started off, I was put in the corner. I had a phone book, and I said, "Go dial for dollars, kid. You're gonna get rejected a lot." And that's one of the reasons why the business.
Is that
was
how
so
you
hard.
started?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had an amazing mentor, a guy named Rob McDougall, who was the senior vice president at Colliers International 20 years ago. And it's a funny story how we met. We'll get into it another time. But you really had to pay your dues to make it in this business.
Did you always want to go into commercial real estate? Like, what brought that on? Like, for people who start in real estate, what is it that
Good question.
like? Okay, I'm going to go into commercial. Is that
Good
the
question.
first step for you?
No, not really. So when I was in my, I guess around 20 years old, let's say,
Right.
I got very interested in understanding what made successful people tick. And
Okay.
that's why I went to school and got a psychology degree.
I see.
And I
I
started,
didn't know that about you,
you
by
did
the
not
way.
know that?
I did not.
Ah, surprise.
Yeah.
So I have a science degree in psychology.
Makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. So in my head, I was like, well, I started to observe certain things. I started to observe that people who were successful financially
Yeah.
were owners and not just consumers.
Right.
They owned assets, like real estate, for instance. So I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which you may have
Yes.
heard of. And I think when I was 15, I read The Richest Man in Babylon, which was a kind of a cool book as well. A bunch of books that I read.
Yeah.
And I started to notice that people who were wealthy understood real estate,
Yes.
and people who were not didn't. So I was like,
It's
that's
true.
interesting. Maybe I need to learn more about this
Some
real
finance
estate
guys are
thing.
gonna it's gonna get very controversial now. Finance guys are gonna be like, well, that's not true.
That's not
It's
exactly
true.
true.
It's
It's
true.
kind of true,
It's true.
right?
Let's be
From
honest.
experience, let's be honest. So at that time, I was a personal trainer. I was finishing university. I was working in radio. I was producing radio talk shows at CIQC 600 AM and Q92 FM.
Oh wow.
I did a lot of different things.
Also something I didn't know about you for as long as we've known each other. You know?
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that you were in the radio world.
Yeah, I spent
Well, I'm glad you're here today.
years
Then.
in radio, and I did TV as well for a time.
Yeah,
I was doing some traffic reports on Global in the morning show. I learned a lot of interesting things,
I'm
and
sure you did.
I met cool people, and I kind of observed a lot of things along the way. Anyway, there was a period of time where I was working in the software development company, and I had I was in sales, and I had a software solution that was just perfect for commercial real estate companies.
Okay.
So I ended up cold calling all the commercial real estate companies in Montreal that I could get my hands on. Didn't really understand what they did. And there was this one guy who was a senior vice president at Colliers, Rob McDougall. He's still in the business. Great guy. And I cold called him, I don't know how many times, and he wouldn't take my call. So at some point
Consistent.
I was consistent. I started giving him weather reports.
Oh wow.
So I
Okay.
would call and I would say, Mr. McDougall, this is Jeremy Kenemy. How are you? Hey, I just wanted to let you know it's going to be 25 degrees under sunny skies, winds coming from the southeast. I'd really like to talk to you. I have some valuable stuff to share with you that's not on your radar. Please call me back. Called many times. Eventually, one day, he called back. I saw his name on the teleprompter thing, and I was like, oh, crap.
Now
I'd
what
have
do
to
I
talk
do?
to him. Now what do I do? Anyway, so we ended up having a great conversation, and I was ready. I was on fire. I was asking him all these questions that he couldn't quite answer at the
You're always on
time.
fire, Jeremy.
He invited me into his office at Place Ville Marie. I walk in with my one suit that I would rotate, ties every day. At Place Ville Marie, 21st floor, I walk in. I see this very successful, good-looking dude, well-dressed, and he's got a bookshelf full of books,
Wow.
many of which that I had read.
That's
So I
interesting.
sat down with him. We started talking about the books. Long story short, I ended up selling him my software solution. And at one point, he comes to me and he says, all right, I'm going to buy your software because I think this could be very useful for our business. Hey, would you like to make some real money? I was like, yes. What's real money? Back then, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
He's like, well, there's probably no one in this office making less than $150,000 a year. This is like,
This is 20 years ago,
20
guys,
years ago,
right? Like,
right?
so we have to be conscious of that. That's close to 350 today, right?
I
would
guess.
assume. Yeah,
I don't know. But I was very young and it just sounded very exciting to me.
absolutely.
So he's like, all right, I'll make you a deal. If you go get your real estate license, commercial, I'll hire you. I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that now. And 9 months later, I came back and I had a job. And
So back then, though, because when I did my class,
yeah,
I did residential, commercial, business, and mortgage brokerage. It was all one class. Was there one specific to commercial?
No, there was no. So that's the whole thing about commercial. When we started, there was no commercial certification. We learned how to sell homes, and then you would learn on the job how to do commercial because
So
the
you have your
certificate.
residential license.
Technically, I have my
Okay, I see.
certificate allows me to do both.
Yeah,
So,
but you don't want to touch residential.
well, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of fascinated by residential because I own homes and I love
Yes.
aspects of
Yes. Yes.
residential,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Like I love looking at homes and seeing, hey, how could we improve this and that? But in corporate real estate, you're generally dealing with business people who are quite educated and sophisticated when it comes to numbers and for me, what I was very interested in was how does a Fortune 500 company create a business case to do this or do that instead of this or that when it comes to their real estate. So fundamentally what we do is we give C-level decision makers in companies the tools, the information that they require so that they can make decisions that can impact lots of people. Like for instance, I remember, I don't know, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I was working on a transaction for a big pharma company called Merck. You may have heard of them, where a big decision in Kirkland was made to, cease the research and development and production at that location.
Right.
We had NDAs. We knew.
The one off of the 40, right?
Yeah. And long story short, we ended up kind of selling off the assets that were there. And then we had a new building built with our friends from Broccolini across the highway to house administrative and sales offices and stuff.
I see.
So you said before that we have access to information. We know what's going on in the city way before other people do. We know sometimes if people are going to gain or lose jobs. We know when new business is coming to the city. We often will deal with
Were
government.
you aware of the Bell Canada layoffs?
I cannot confirm nor deny those allegations, Your Honor.
Let's not go, but that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
No, I was not involved. But
Yeah.
that's unfortunate.
That's a big one.
That's a
And,
big one.
it's really, I've discussed this actually quite a bit, and what the governments have done with regards to rate cuts, the economy. Once the economy starts to gain a flow, it's very neo-economist policies to come and say, okay, well, let's just bring up the rates, or let's stop the economy because it's going too fast. And I feel like using ancient economic policies for modern economic problems does not work. And the result of that is going to be things like this, right? So we know right away when the government or the policymakers with regards to the economy want to slow the economy. We know that in a year or two from then, well, people are going to lose their jobs, the economy is going to slow down, and in an attempt to taper inflation,
Yeah,
this is the ultimate excuse. Although it doesn't work that way necessarily. And rate cuts, they affect real estate
they do.
much more than they do anything else.
Very much so.
And our issue today, though real estate was an issue, I'm not discounting that, was a lot more focused on everyday goods. And that has not been tamed in any shape, way, or form. Why? Because a lot of these companies were profiteering. Profiteering will not be solved with an increase in interest rates. So we just discussed Bell with their layoffs. Yeah, why did that happen? Because the government decides that we're going to have to put a stop to the economy or slow it down. And then now we have to refuel it.
Yeah.
So what's going to start happening, we already see posted rates at the very least are dropping, although the prime rate has remained stable for the last little bit. And now they're forecasting that it's going to drop. Well, why do we have to go through this whole fluctuation and zigzag constantly? Why can't we find a policy that will allow for the economy to stay more stable? And this has been, though a challenge, I mean, it's easier said than done. These policies do not seem to work. We need to change something.
Do you want to become the next finance minister? I think that job might be up for grabs pretty soon.
I'm an
Just saying.
accountant by trade, And when I graduated, I decided I will never touch any numbers again. But I look at this, and there is something fundamentally wrong. And whatever the agenda may be, I'm not saying that there is an agenda, this is not working.
I can tell you that in corporate real estate, the impact of the interest rates has been huge.
Absolutely.
I'll give you a specific case in point. So, a good client of mine recently acquired $100 million worth of office buildings with a view to converting them to labs, life science space, to create like an innovation, research and development hub ecosystem, if you will. And we were in a situation where the interest rates went up so many times that every single time we were in the process of negotiating, or there was a process of negotiation for the acquisition of these buildings.
Right.
But because the interest rates went up so many times and there were multiple partners involved in the acquisition and pooling the money for the acquisition, every time the interest rates went up, the agreements between the investors had to be renegotiated, and it ended up that the acquisition dragged on for months and months and months and months and months. And then when the vacancy rate goes up and you're buying office assets, the value can go down,
Yes.
right? So we've seen big challenges on that front. Like if you look at buildings in downtown Montreal, those skyscrapers, this is my playground. A lot of the values of these buildings have gone down.
Yes.
And, right, because of increased vacancy and other factors. I mean, it's interesting because what we've seen in downtown Montreal is a bifurcation between super high quality AAA space downtown that's well situated on the metro, loads of services in the building, good air quality, good natural light. There's still demand for these kinds of office spaces despite hybrid work.
Right.
But when you look at older, smaller, B-class buildings downtown that have less services, the parking's not as good, they're not connected to the subway, these guys are suffering big time because there's been this big concept of flight to quality. In order to get people back to the office, companies, more than ever, have been investing money into improving the quality of their office space or their space in general. And the thought behind that is because they want to compel their people or motivate their people to come back to the office. Because most employers, most of the time, feel that when their people are present, they're more productive, they're more innovative.
Which is true, isn't it?
Which I think it varies from industry to industry, but generally speaking, I think it's true.
Right. I
Right?
mean, the days where for whatever reason I'm at home, I mean, rare are those days. I'll be honest. It's I don't really ever work from home. But if ever I am at home for X, Y, or Z reasons, the kids are off and I have to be home, whatever it is, obviously you're never going to be as productive. You have too many distractions. Again, we were discussing work mode.
I think so. I
Work
mean,
mode is important.
some people will,
you know.
will argue with us. Some people will say, well, if I don't need to drive an hour in the morning and drive an hour in the evening, I can get out of bed, start working right away. I think for some people that can sometimes be true, but I think for most people that's not the case. And I also feel that when you're in your work environment, you have the tools that you need. It's a stupid thing I'm going to say, but the internet works better. You have access to your printers. You have access to other humans around you that you need to collaborate with. You have younger people learning by osmosis from the older people.
Not
It's better.
not to mention, like, you don't want to involve all of your work problems at home. This
No.
is your environment
Totally.
of peace.
Oh my God, yeah.
If I end up and look, there was a lot of frustrations in our business. Let's not lie. Okay. We have challenges that we have to deal with on a daily, and you're
Absolutely.
overcoming those challenges, and that's fine. It's a part of our job. It's what we're passionate
It's fun.
about. We're great at doing it.
Yeah.
It's fun. Sure. But nonetheless, there are challenges that come in. So once you are dealing with certain obstacles, you don't want to deal with those obstacles in your happy space,
Not at
right?
all. So it's funny you should say that. I hate working from home. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't mind on a Friday afternoon. Let's say I'm in super early every day. At lunch or 1 o'clock, I'll come home and work the
I get
rest
your
of the
text
day.
messages at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's my alarm clock.
My apologies.
Puria, wake up.
Wake up. Get off your butt. Did you work out today?
Tonight. Hockey's tonight.
Good man.
Yeah,
So,
keeping me on my toes.
but it's you have a lot of stress in your job, and then you don't want to associate stress with your home peace environment.
No,
Me personally, other people might feel differently, but
100%.
it drives me bananas. See, people don't realize, you understand this. As a real estate advisor, you have many roles. You are a financial analyst. You are a psychologist. You are a lawyer, right? You are we are workplace strategists. We're not all those things, but we kind of somewhat play that role. You're
Oh,
architects.
we are.
We are. So we have to wear many different hats. And
And we're friends. And we're friends,
we're friends.
right?
And we have one of the best jobs in the world in the
Yes.
following way. We have the ability to wear many different hats in the same day, right? So you wake up in the morning and you have a presentation. So you're a presenter. You're doing a presentation to 100 people on the state of office leasing in Greater Montreal, or you're doing a discussion where you're talking about the effective interest rates on the residential real estate market or whatever. 2 hours later, you're in a lease negotiation for an hour. An hour after that, you're putting an offer together. An hour after that, you're on the phone with a lawyer and you're looking at certain provisions in a lease that need to be modified, and how do we modify them? It's not boring. We get to do,
No, it's not.
and we get to meet amazing people, and we do a tremendous amount of work that
Yes.
people do not see. People do not realize, and I know this because I watch residential real estate agents and what they do in the background when you're trying to, if I hire one to buy a house or sell a house, it's the old iceberg analogy. You see 20%, but 80% of it is under here.
Yes.
And the perception is that the broker just came in, he swoops in, he does this and that, some paperwork, and he gets a commission.
He made this money, and look how easy it is.
Yeah. And they don't understand that it may have taken 5 years to get hired by this company for them to trust you to hire you.
Yes.
Then I could tell you, in commercial, a real estate deal could easily take 9 months to 2 years, depending on the situation. We've had
the commercial deal we're working on right now is 3 years. We're in
3
the
years,
third year.
right?
Right? People don't understand that.
They don't know what they don't know.
And to your point, they see 20% of that iceberg.
Yeah.
They see nothing that's under it. And again, it goes down to what I was discussing before as to how it's marketed.
Very much so.
How it's marketed is, and look, it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
You have to be able to portray that you know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know where you're going. I appreciate what you said before, where you said it's great what you're doing. It's so innovative to have this podcast. And you wouldn't you know it that there are people right now who are saying, oh, well, why is Puria even doing a podcast? I've heard from people, who does Puria think he is that he's doing a podcast? I don't think I'm anybody. I'm doing a podcast because I love, first of all, discussing matters with regards to real estate, business, economy, self, the self-development, right? All of those things are important. They are things that have brought me to where I am today. And in fact, to do this podcast, the way that my days have to be organized to be able to have a podcast every 2 weeks, just doing that is a challenge, but I do it gladly. Why? Because I want to have these discussions. I want to grow.
Yeah.
And I want to show a different facet of real estate than look at what I sold, look at what I bought, look at what I sold, look at what I bought. You know what? I've been in the business a long time. People know, of my track record and what I can deliver to my clients.
Sure.
And I've been very, very fortunate, to your point. We deal with great networks,
For
great
sure.
friends. These are people who have become friends, and it is a fascinating business. And the important thing is to keep your job enjoyable. And the moment you don't enjoy it anymore, this is where the threat is. So I appreciate the support, because that was something that came up, and I said to people, look, if somebody doesn't want to listen or watch my podcast, I please feel free to unfollow, do not watch it. But to to me, these discussions are important. It's important to have to engage in dialogue with regards to what's going on in general, and business and entrepreneurship and our own work, real estate. All these things are fascinating topics to me, and I want to discuss it further. So I do thank you for that.
Well, look, you're super welcome. And you hit on the the crux of the matter is for you personally, you by interviewing people who have different perspectives, you're going to learn and become even more well-rounded than you are, right?
Absolutely.
And all that information that you're learning will be brought to bear in various situations next week or the week after, when you're with a client and you're in a situation where you have to make an important decision or give proper advice, where if they go down road number one, the deal blows up, versus deal number two, where there's a good outcome, a win-win, and everyone's happy,
Right.
right? So you need that knowledge. So you always got to read books. You always got to interview intelligent people. And I always try to surround myself as much as I can with people who are smarter than me. I know that's not original, but it's actually really true. I think it was a friend of mine once said, he said, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
Right? And he's right.
100%.
He's right. And you can't be the best at everything.
No.
But in our business, we have a crazy diverse skill set that we are required to bring to bear. If you're working on 50 real estate deals at a time across the province, and it's fun because it's like playing ping pong. One of my friends, Colin Worrell, once said, he said, the business is like playing ping pong, except you have 50 balls going at the same time. Sometimes most of the balls are on the other side of the net.
Right.
Sometimes they're all on your side of the net. As much as possible, you want them to be like 50-50 so you can breathe,
Yes.
But real estate deals take on a life of their own, and they don't care about you going to the gym or you're getting
Nope.
your sleep. The thing is, you have to sort of find ways to be organized, to have fun, get your work done, also do other things outside of work, so you remain a well-rounded person. And physical fitness is a huge
Huge.
piece of that.
Huge.
I'm just looking at how fit you are now compared to 3 years ago,
Thank you. Yeah.
right?
I try.
And
I've tried.
you must
I have
feel better.
changed. Definitely. Look, during the pandemic, especially, and I hate bringing it up because I hate that time during the
Yeah.
pandemic, despite what people had thought about real estate agents during the pandemic. That's not a time that was fun for any real estate agent, by the way, right?
No.
So whoever has this in their head needs to really have a reality check. If you only spent one day in our shoes during the pandemic, people would just realize how insane things can get. On that note, however, it created bad habits because we were so go, go, go. Just like you, I remember it was busy for you too. We were doing 18 to 20 to 22-hour days. This is not a joke,
Yeah,
right? And
it was rough.
to be able to handle that and all the ongoing things. And look, it's been very busy since beginning January too. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm kind of in this kind of 16 to 20-hour day again too. The difference is that I've become a lot more disciplined, right? I've always been disciplined, but I didn't realize how disciplined I can be until I started to go back to working out, going back to handling my nutrition. All those things are important. Why? It has nothing to do only with being fit. It makes you feel better. Yes. You feel lighter because you're not eating all this junk. All of that, yes. But the difference is that you're disciplined and you are able to overcome that, craving you have in the moment or any of these things. And if you're able to overcome those things, it makes you more disciplined. if you're more disciplined in your life, you're more disciplined at work, you're more disciplined in your business. And that has allowed me today to also fit in this podcast for an hour every 2 weeks in my busy schedule because everything is set and we know what we're doing and I know exactly how to manage it. Now, business is growing, so you always have to be able to mend yourself to that point. But discipline is super important. And that's what
I agree.
changes a lot of things. I think that's what changes a disciplined realtor or businessman versus one that's undisciplined. You will see the differences.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
And thank you for the compliment, by the way.
well,
I
it's
appreciate that.
obvious, it's legit.
Thank you.
I'm very observant of these kinds of things.
Because you were in the fitness world too, right?
Yeah, look, I started working out at 16 years old, and I made a promise to myself when I was 16. I said, because I observed that when people get older, they fall into what I call the trap. The trap
Yes.
is, you know, you're in high school and you're active and you're playing sports and you're fit just because you're young and you're fit. And then you get older, you go through school, university, and you're sitting more. And eventually you get a job and you're sitting more. And every modern invention that's ever been made by man robs you of exercise. We did not evolve to sit on our butts all day.
No.
We don't function correctly if we're not moving. So when I was 16 years old, I made a pledge to myself. I said, listen, I'm going to be fit my whole life. I don't know how I'm going to do it, and I read up on nutrition and I trained like an animal for like decades.
Right.
And it gives me energy to do what I got to do, but it also gives me discipline. And it's that same thinking that we apply to our workday to get results for our clients.
Yes.
Like it all goes together. You can either, if you do hard things on a daily basis, your life will be simple and easy. If you take the easy way on everything, your life's going to be hard,
Yes.
which is a little counterintuitive, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So, you were talking a
Well,
lot.
you also gain the benefits of that, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It makes you stronger. Your tolerance for discomfort and pain is higher.
100%.
Hey, the degree to which you're successful in life is the degree to which you're willing to do unpleasant things to achieve certain goals.
I love that.
But it's true, right?
It's true.
I believe that.
I believe that too.
One of my early mentors taught me that, and it's just totally makes sense.
And we see it. We deal with a lot of, high-end clients as well. And we see what they do. And the level of discipline these people have is unfathomable, honestly, when you look at it.
Yeah.
And it makes you think we have more time than we think in a day, and you could do a lot more than you think.
Yep.
And if you're sitting at home and you're like, okay, you know what, in an hour, tomorrow, after tomorrow, in a year, all these things, and before you know it, 5 years has passed, 10 years has passed, and you still haven't really fundamentally changed anything. For me, every year needs to be significantly different than the year before. And I always try to evolve with that. And this podcast, by the way, is one of those things that I wanted to incorporate this year, specifically to allow me to get kind of into that zone and that zone of discomfort. People don't necessarily believe me when I tell them I am not as comfortable in front of a camera as you might think. And, even speaking, I'm trying to perfect that when I'm discussing with my clients, when I'm discussing with businessmen, when I'm discussing with Jeremy Kenemy, commercial superstar. I want to know that if I'm speaking eloquently and I'm speaking at the same level as these people. And this kind of forces me into that, in addition to the fact that I'm learning.
Which is
I'm
fun.
learning more. We know a lot, but you touched up on this. We don't know everything. We know a lot, but we don't know everything. And we strive for perfection to reach excellence.
Yeah, and look, every single real estate deal that I do, I learn another thing.
100%.
Like some things are routine.
Even the one that we're doing now.
The one that we're doing now has never been done before.
No.
So even like there are certain aspects of the transaction that to me I've done a billion times. I know exactly what we need to do. But there's other stuff where I'm like,
because formulas change.
Well, yeah.
Formulas change. Things change. And this is what I'm saying. learn to think outside the box to make a deal work to satisfy all parties involved. I mean, look, these are corporations we're dealing with, but still, this is an interesting concept. What we're going through, we're not allowed to discuss, but it's interesting how we've formulated it. Now we're not finalized yet, but it's you're always learning. To your point,
Oh, very much so. And if you want to be a good broker, there's a few things you need to do, which you know. You need to know your market inside out, right? You got to be good at marketing yourself,
yeah,
but you also have to have the ability to put yourself in the shoes of your client,
yes, very
right?
important, very important.
I know some brokers, it's always about them. They're this, they're that. No. Yes, but no. You need to put yourself in the shoes of the client. This is the situation that's in front of them. If you were them, how would you react to this situation?
Yes,
Right?
irrespective of the money you're making, that's the hard thing for a lot of people.
Totally. You have to put your client's best interest in front of your own as a broker. Always. Sometimes that might hurt a little bit.
Yes.
But long term, it's the right thing to do, and long term, it'll actually serve you. People are smarter than you think.
Oh yeah.
People know they have a bullshit meter inside them that goes off.
Absolutely.
You have to be authentic. You have to try and be as honest as you possibly can, give the best advice possible, as much as humanly possible. And you know what? If you work hard, it works out in the end.
And the unfortunate reality is that there's not a lot of people who do that in our industry. Hence why we are amongst the most hated professions. I was reading this the other day.
It's funny. It's so funny you should say that. So I'm not really sure what the statistics are in residential or commercial. I have no idea. But I remember when I was coming up in the business, I had a very, very strong sense of, well, not discipline, yes, but I always wanted to kind of do the right thing.
Yeah.
I'd read a lot of books on, it's important to do the right thing and be honest and all this. So I come into the business and I'm like, I'm excited. I'm representing a client and I want to do the right thing for him. And I'm putting in that extra work, going the extra mile to show him that I care. And I'm trying to do a good job and I'm out there fighting to protect his interests. And sometimes the client walks in with a preconceived notion that you're a scumbag and that you're trying to get something from him.
Yes.
We're always able to turn that around, but the question is, how much brain damage do I need to go through to get to that point? Some people are not like that. Some people give you the benefit of the doubt immediately, and it's like, okay, we're working together, we're on the same team. You got my back, I got yours, and it's all good. And when you get older and you've been in the business for a long time, you choose to work with those people.
Yes.
And you try to stay away from those other people if you can.
Not to mention you have a track record. That's A. B. Your name goes everywhere. Your network grows. People are talking about you all the time. Anybody who wants anything, in the office world or whatever, or in the lab space, I'm like, there is nobody better than Jeremy Kenemy. And I believe that sincerely when I say this.
I will tell you there are a lot of extremely competent, intelligent, amazing brokers that I work with out there. But I will also tell you that there are other brokers who've been around for 20 years. And I'm like, how's this guy still in the business?
Yeah, we have a lot of those. And
we have all that.
It's important, I think, with time too. I mean, your reputation, those challenges, I think they might still happen, but a lot more in the early days. So if you're able to overcome that, and if you're able to stay consistent, and if you're really able to work to the benefit of your clients, this is super important.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the biggest challenge people have is that they cannot put the client before themselves.
You bring up a really good point. We're very close to closing a transaction we've been working on with my partner, Ralph Carcani, who's amazing. And I'm involved in all his deals and he's involved in mine in the background. So we'll have maybe one person who's sort of more client-facing sometimes. And yesterday a client sent us a lease signed. It's a big commission. And he said, here, I signed the lease, send it to the landlord. We noticed a couple of mistakes in the lease. Now, We could have easily said nothing
Mm-hmm.
and the client wouldn't have noticed.
No.
But Ralph turned to me and I said, "Hey, we got a problem here."
Yeah.
I said, "We have to do the right thing on this. We've worked for a year and a half on this. We want to close this deal. The client wants the deal to close.
Yeah.
We're this close to closing it." We had to call the client and say, "Listen, man, we noticed something. We don't feel comfortable having you sign this or giving this lease. We need to review this thing. So it's going to delay the lease by 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But you got to do the right thing for your client."
You got to do the right thing.
And we looked at each other like, we got to do the right thing for our client. Okay. So that's yesterday we made that call.
And that's what people don't see, right? In the background.
They have no
When they're
idea.
like, oh, well, what is it? I think that's a differentiating factor. If you care, you're working more. You're
Oh,
working
for
a
sure.
lot more because you are looking at every bit that can go wrong. I mean, I see a transaction, I see a contract, um, you know, people who are part of my team or, in the office are like, you are way too picky with the clauses. I'm picky with the clauses because if you leave anything to the imagination, believe me, it's going to go wrong. And one word can make all the difference.
Totally. And who do you think they're going to blame?
Absolutely. The broker.
The broker's always the easiest guy to blame.
And then what do many brokers, again, it's not to run people in our industry under the bus, but they're like, well, I'm not a lawyer. Well, you better make sure that when you are putting a clause in, it's protecting your client. If you're not a lawyer, call your lawyer. It's going to cost you money, pay it.
So it's interesting that you say
You know?
that. So we tell our clients in every transaction, we're not lawyers. We are not permitted to give legal advice.
No.
However, we are extremely and actively involved in all the legalities.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. We will negotiate the general terms and conditions of a lease over a period of a year. We've done market surveys, we've shown them spaces, we've done RFPs, it's a whole process we put them through. Now we're at the point where we have an agreement in place and there's a lease negotiation. We always go through every clause of the lease and we provide our perspective, our comments. We give it to our client and say, you need to review this with your lawyer. We're happy to work with them. We are not lawyers, but we know a thing or two about leases.
Yes.
So we get actively involved and they're looking to us for guidance to protect their interests. So that's what I was telling you earlier. We act in a sense, we're legal advisors in a sense. We're master negotiators. We are psychologists.
Yes.
More
With
often
a
than I'd like to
psychology
be.
degree, I mean, who better?
Very much.
Yeah.
Financial analysts,
Yes.
right? And we are a chef d'orchestre.
Yeah.
Like, what I mean by that is when you take on a mandate to go from where you are to where you want to go, there's a process.
Yes.
So what is the process? Doing the needs analysis for the client, uncovering different options that can potentially work, doing visits, bringing in architects and workplace strategists to help, let's say, design an office space, bringing in construction people to figure out what does it cost to build out per square foot or to build out an office,
Yeah.
right? Then drawing up paperwork, offers and proposals and negotiations, and doing financial analysis where you're comparing option A to B to C and presenting it to the CEO or the CFO of a company and saying, okay, we've worked on this for a year. Here are 3 options, option A, B, and C. We're going to create a business case for you so you can justify to your board moving 200 employees from this location to this one,
Yeah.
paying this, spending this much on construction to build out the space. So we have many, many, many hats.
Not to mention, I'm sorry to cut you off, but the process is one thing.
Yeah,
The competence obviously has to come with it.
yeah,
And then what a lot of clients don't see is how you are actually creating the experience for them, because in the background, we're always eliminating all of the noise and the headaches.
oh yeah,
And you just come back with, the not the raw, but you come with the final kind of message or the final product or, the final draft. But in the background, we're negotiating, we're arguing, we're discussing, and there's a lot of back and forth. And these back and forths take hours, weeks,
Oh
months.
yeah,
And then
emails.
suddenly we're like, oh, well, now we have this,
Yeah.
right?
So they only
Now we
see
have
that.
this. They only see
And that's great.
this, which is our job.
It's our job.
But in the background, the amount of work that it takes to bring it from point A to point B to point C,
Yep.
there's a lot that's involved. So all of that is true. And then we have many hats. And how you're able to create this fluidity is just as important. So all this to say, like these processes are super important. And again, I love what I do. I love real estate. You love real estate, but it doesn't come without its challenges. Now, let's discuss the future of real estate right now with regards to what we know today, February 2024.
Yeah.
Where are we going in the commercial space world? I mean, you've discussed vacancy. Will this not create opportunities for businesses to be able to acquire these properties right now? These commercial properties, are they not quote unquote discounted as a result?
So again, when people talk about commercial real estate, you have to realize that there are many different types of commercial real estate.
Yes.
For instance, there's the capital markets. So we have a capital markets team who will sell portfolios of spaces, industrial and office spaces.
I really love that market, by the way.
Right?
But yeah.
There's that one. We have retail specialists who will do transactions with merchants or owners of buildings on St. Catherine Street downtown
Right.
in Montreal. We have office leasing specialists like myself. We have, and also people who do pharmaceutical stuff. So we founded the Canadian Life Science Practice Group in Canada, myself and another individual across Canada. So we do a lot of biopharma stuff. We have other people who do multi-residential,
Right.
minimum 100 doors. So when people say, what's going on in commercial real estate? Well, the
Yeah.
answer is it depends, right?
Let's exclude multi-residential. I mean, I've done quite a bit of multi-residential as well. It's a whole different other animal. Maybe we'll touch up on it. But with regards to office spacing, and let's call it industrial, which is what we've
Sure.
worked on together quite a few times.
So the vacancy rate obviously has gone up a lot overall, and this is due to hybrid work. So a lot of companies are spending good amounts of money on improving their workspace, but a lot of companies have not been excellent at instituting hybrid work policies and enforcing them.
I see.
They are getting better, but we were locked down in Quebec more than most places,
In the world, forget just Canada. Yeah.
right? Always different in Quebec,
Yeah.
as we know. So people developed the habit of not coming to work.
Yes.
Then at some point, you're like, well, you got to come back now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I enjoyed not having to come to work, working in my pajamas. I'm exaggerating, but
Yeah. I mean, you're not really.
so we've had to sort of undo that. So here's what's probably happening. A lot of our clients have reduced the square footage that they occupy. But because of the increased vacancy, for some, it's been an opportunity to upgrade the quality of their space. So let's say you take less square footage, but you upgrade the quality of your space. The sublease market has been very active in office leasing. So, there's over 1 million square feet of sublease
Yeah.
space available in the market. Again, the high quality stuff doesn't stick around very long. The lower quality stuff has a hard time getting subleased.
Yeah.
But you asked me where things are going. So, the industrial market. So for the office leasing market right now, we're still in that pattern of the vacancy rate is stable. It's around 17%, 17.8%, I think, according to our last statistics, which is pretty high.
Yeah.
8-9% is probably what we would call a balanced market. So right now it's a tenant's market.
Yeah.
What we've observed over the pandemic when it comes to industrial real estate. So what happened during the pandemic? Everyone was ordering stuff from Amazon, right? Ordering things online. People needed warehouse space. There was a lot of onshoring that was occurring when we realized how vulnerable we were in Canada.
Right.
Because we're not producing nearly as much as we used to compared to the, back in the day.
Right.
So what ended up happening was, and it's still the case to a certain extent, the vacancy rate in industrial got very, very low. It's like 1%, maybe less.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
right, do you remember that? So people who negotiated leases 4 or 5 years ago were paying, I don't know, 7 net per square foot, and come time to renew, and landlords were asking $15 to $22 net per square
Yeah.
foot plus operating expenses and taxes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of scary when you're running a business where real estate is your second or third largest fixed cost
Yeah.
after paying
Absolutely.
salaries and benefits and such. So we've observed, though, I speak to my colleagues regularly, and we were talking about hybrid, being in an open work area. So I hear the conversations from my industrial guys behind me,
Yeah.
and the vacancy rate has gone up significantly in industrial,
Yes.
and the demand for industrial space, with the interest rates going up and the economy cooling, has gone down compared to what it was 2 years ago.
Yes. Which it was at an ultimate
It was
low.
it was super low vacancy, super high rents.
And
So
these are very high rents. I mean, look, people are always thinking Montreal's cheaper. Now you have to understand something because, yeah, if you're going to net it per square foot, it's one thing. But then after that, our taxes are higher than Ontario.
yeah,
So oftentimes we'd be kind of neck and neck with them in terms of cost,
yeah,
which is surprising to people, but that's real. And the industrial market was that hot. And now, obviously, everywhere across Canada, this is a reality where obviously vacancy is going up and is changing the dynamic of real estate through the industrial world, through office leasing, office spacing.
yep.
And the same is true in residential real estate
Mm-hmm.
because now we've really started to see things pick up from early January 2024. Honestly, it's been pretty crazy. Busy.
What's causing that? The interest rates are still high.
Yeah, interest rates are still high, relatively speaking. The prime rate has remained stable, but the qualification rate has gone down. And the qualification rate is paralleled with the bond market.
Right.
And so it's not the same. The prime rate does play a role, but it's not ultimately everything.
Mm-hmm.
And to put this in perspective, the prime rate is the same that it was in October, yet I have clients getting 1% less on their rate, even though prime rate is stable, than what my clients were getting in October. So the posted rates are going down, even if prime rate is
Okay.
remaining stable. Now, the sentiment is that rates are supposed to drop. And this sentiment in residential real estate, emotions take a toll,
For sure.
much more than commercial. Emotions take a toll. And then people are now starting to say, you know what? Now's the time. I've been waiting. Last year wasn't a great year for real estate. So I was waiting on the sidelines. And now I want to get into the game. I want my home. My children need to go to school. I want to be in this area. I'm afraid real estate is going to start exploding again. You know, all of these things are speculation, but this is the sentiment right now. And so people need to buy homes, people need to sell homes, and so this reality remains in any economy. This is a reality. So the sentiment is such, and so it's been picking up. Now, picking up means we are super busy. It's not always fruitful necessarily, but that means that in the next couple of months, we're probably going to start seeing a rise. And right now, I was reading an article today with regards to the statistics in residential real estate, which we already see is picking up significantly in comparison to last year at the same time. So I think that in general, the sentiments are changing. And supply is starting to increase, yes, but we're starting to see buyers becoming a little bit more risk tolerant compared to last year. I think that's going to start shifting the residential market. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the commercial market will pick up this sentiment as well.
Again, I think it depends on the aspect of commercial real estate. When I
Yes.
speak to our people who focus on retail, they're telling us that they're super busy.
Yeah.
People in industrial are telling us that when they have listings, they're remaining on the market longer.
Yeah.
And on
Same ring is true in residential, by the way.
you would
Yeah.
agree with
Yeah.
that. And like I said, on the office leasing side, People still are going to require an office. It's just how people work is different because of hybrid work. And I think that people are gradually coming back to the office, but more
Yeah.
slowly here than other places.
And we just need to adjust to it.
We need to just. I have a couple of questions for you,
Tell
if you
me.
would permit me,
Go ahead.
as a dumb commercial real estate
No.
broker who doesn't understand
Please. Come on.
residential.
Come on now.
I remember
Don't play that
during
humble game with me.
I remember during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I remember there was a period, I guess in 21, when people were bidding for houses
Yeah.
20, 30, 40,000
Yeah.
dollars over market.
I mean, more than that, but yeah.
More than that. So I remember I would go for a walk with my wife Jenny and our dog, and I'd say this house is for sale, and the next day it's like gone.
Gone.
And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, we've had a bull run for a really long time with the
Yeah.
stock market. The economy's been really good.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about a crash, a correction is inevitable. It's going to happen pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, okay, why the hell would this person pay 50,000, 100,000 over, or whatever? I'm not privy to your numbers.
Yeah.
When we're all anticipating that because everything in life is a cycle, there's going to be a crash at some point soon, and they should theoretically be able to get houses at lower rents pretty soon. Now, obviously, interest rates is part of that. People were like, okay, well, the interest rates are still low right now. Can you explain to me why people were working so hard to get in the
yes.
game? Should they have waited till now, or
No.
what do you think?
Look, so we need to understand something, that this was a time that was unprecedented in history. You're talking about, like, historically, we're talking about a pandemic. Yes, it's happened in history, but in our modern history, no.
No.
And this was an uncertain time. And in an uncertain time, a lot of things happen. Emotions take a toll. I was discussing that emotions are at the forefront of residential real estate. And oftentimes it's important to keep that in check. And that's my job as a residential real estate agent as well. When I have my residential hat on, not when I have my commercial hat on, but even when you have your commercial hat on, it's kind of the same thing. You have to keep emotions in check. Although in commercial, people's emotions are a little bit more stable than in residential.
For sure.
And that's kind of the difference. Now, what happens is that now you have unprecedented low rates, and people have a lot more affordability. And so suddenly, you're looking at homes being listed, not to mention the fact that, yes, there was some games being played in our world where things were underpriced to allow the market to adjust to itself. There are pros and cons to this, which I don't want to get into right now because, people have different opinions about it, but it is something I'll discuss in the future. Now, people are thinking, we're in a pandemic. We can't go out. We can't do anything. We need a space. We want to be home. We want to be happy. We're depressed. I need this. And this is going to be the solution to all my problems. Now, psychologically, this was the issue. I had to really put a lot of my clients in check, hence why it took longer sometimes with buyers, because I would not allow them to go past a certain amount.
Right.
I wouldn't allow it. I'm like, guys, come on. You have to look at this rationally. People were not rational during the pandemic. And obviously, the economy is another thing. Now, the economy was rolling. And during this time, the government, I don't want to get controversial, but they decide to add fuel to the fire. And, okay, let's keep decreasing rates. Why? So this is my biggest thing where I say, yes, the rates should have never been that low to begin with. But then suddenly, when you have a car going at 200 miles an hour and you pull the brakes, what is it going to do? It's going to start flipping over.
It's going to skid. Flip, yeah.
So this is kind of what we experienced. And then eventually it kind of plateaued. And then when it plateaued, the government's like, oh, the economy is too hot. Let's increase rates. With regards to what residential real estate is, it took a toll on everything because of the emotions, because of the interest rates, and it was really the perfect storm that created this. Now we have to be able to navigate the realities of the market, and the realities of the market will always fluctuate depending on the circumstances. I mean, the interest rates are the forefront of a lot of what happens in residential real estate, but supply and demand takes a toll as well on residential real estate, as it does in commercial or any other business. Now we have to kind of see where the future holds. But I think that in any case, you always have to be able to overcome the challenges that you're dealing with in any given time, commercial or residential. And I think that that is where experience comes in and the wisdom that you have in real estate after so many years to be able to look at that and be able to pinpoint what needs to be done at what time, right?
Yep, you got to know how to do the right thing the right way at the right time.
Absolutely.
Otherwise,
Absolutely.
it's like baking a cake. You have all the ingredients, but if you put them in the wrong order,
It
who
won't
knows
be
what
the
you're going to
same.
get.
And that touch is important,
It is.
right? The chef's touch is important. So, how you're able to also position everything and how you're communicating the information, how you're communicating your negotiations, a real art, right? I remember when we had done a deal together. What was it, 2 years ago? Do you remember we were 8 guys in the middle of this space and we were kind of just discussing in an open space. It was like a scene out of a movie.
We could have done a show, a television show.
We really
It was
should
kind of
have.
cool. Yeah.
And in 1 hour, we did the back and forth and we came to a conclusion for both parties and we made the deal happen.
Yeah.
Such is the case when Jeremy Kenemy and Poria and Sari get together, it
Yeah, we're a pretty
seems.
good team.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a pleasure doing all these different transactions with you, and I'm looking forward to what the future
We're going to do more.
has in store for us. Jeremy Kenemy, commercial business guru, realtor, call it what you will, but it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'm looking forward to doing this with you again.
Thank you for having me. On behalf of my team, we're very honored to be here. We wish you a lot of luck with your podcast.
Thanks, man.
And I can't wait to do this again.
Absolutely. Episode 7 is a wrap. See you all soon.